series on deliverance. And we have one verse. It's out of Psalm chapter 34, verse 19. This is Mother's Day. This is a Mother's Day message. A little bit different, though. He says there, many are the afflictions of the righteous. That doesn't mean a few. There's plenty. Plenty of problems for the righteous. This is David speaking this. If anybody knew it was David. Many are the afflictions of the righteous. He said, but the Lord delivers him out of all of them. God himself delivers each and every one of us from our problems. Every one of them. Say, well, was that a Mother's Day message? Well, the fact is, a mother is always a mother. In the sense that when she has that child, it's like, it doesn't matter if she's 100 years old and her child is 80 years old. Still her child, and she's still worrying about the child, she's still praying about the child, she's still encouraging the child. A child is always their child. So your child might be 60 or 80 years old, but you still think of him as your little, whoever it is. It's your child. It's motherhood. So in that sense, that is something that starts and it never really ends. Even if the child passes away, the act of motherhood changes a woman forever. Usually you can tell a woman whether she's had children or not, because it changes their attitude. It changes who they are. It changes how they think. It changes their orientation. It's motherhood. So how does that relate to this message? Well, motherhood is not an easy thing. Every problem, every affliction that your child has, you carry it. You carry it with you. It's always there with you. And even though you can't solve it, you try your best to. Because you're a mom. That's just how it is. I have another part to this message, and it relates to me personally, as most of you know, or many of you. Last Wednesday, I woke up and I had double vision, which I still have today. So I went to the doctor. And they gave me tests, and they said, no, your eye checks out fine. You don't have any brain problems, but your sixth right cranial nerve is not working. That's why I'm getting the double vision. And he said, well, were you hit in the head? Because if you have a brain trauma, a head trauma, like getting into a fight or getting hit in the head, that could cause it. I said, no. He said, well, did you have any Botox? He said, women, yeah, Botox, and they stick it to get rid of the crow's feet and out the side. He said, that'll cause it. He was very delicate about it. He said, no, I haven't had any Botox. He said, well, I didn't think so, but he said, it was one of these macho things, I guess. I said, no, that wasn't it. And then another friend of mine who's a doctor laughed and he said, that's also a sign of too much Viagra. And I said, no, that's not a problem. So the doctor says, well, for men with a brain trauma, usually lasts about, he said about 6 weeks. Women with Botox, it's like 3 to 4 months. But he says, well, I want to send you to a neuro-ophthalmologist, and they'll run more tests. He says, but it could get really expensive, like $15,000. I said, thank you very much. And I left. And I had everything I needed. How do you say everything I needed? Well, I had everything I needed in the sense that my eye is fine, my brain is fine. Now, I don't need to know what caused the problem. And I don't even know how to solve the problem. Because clearly, God brought this to pass, and clearly God will clear it up in its time. The issue is not how to fix it. The issue isn't when it's going to be fixed. The issue isn't even about having faith for God to fix it. The issue is about staying focused on God. Because He allowed this to do a work in me. Coming back, many are the afflictions of the righteous. This is just another one He brought. To bring me up to a higher level. It is absolutely an irritation. I can't drive. And most of the time I wear a patch, but I didn't want a distraction today by wearing the patch. In the future I probably will be. But I didn't want to have the distraction, everybody looking. It's like, oh, that patch makes them look like whatever. And then people's heads go wandering off in all kinds of directions, miss the message. So the point is that it's not about what happened and how to clear it up. Clearly God allowed it to happen, and God is going to clear it up in His time. But He caused it to do a work in my life. I have a pretty good idea what that work is. But it's not about focusing on the work either. Yes, I absolutely believe that God's going to heal it. And the reason why I say that is the faith. The faith is I'm continue to work and do what I need to do in spite of the problem, as if I was healed. Not presumptuously, because that is completely in God's hands. But I have to continue to move forward and trust God. Now, I could be angry, I could be frustrated, and a lot of people are, and I can't blame them, because that's the first and the natural reaction. But I have to look and say, well, God, what are you doing in my life? Everything that God does in your life has a cost associated with it. And so he brought this for me to work on me, not to get angry and frustrated, and not to be begging him, fix me, fix me, fix me. No, it's all about getting closer to him and addressing whatever problem that I have. It's funny that I have double vision, because I think that has something to do with my problem. What do I mean? Well, of course, we all recognize that God is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. He knows all things, he can do all things. And he's everywhere. But how does that pertain to my life? See, to the extent that I don't acknowledge that in the way that I live, I have double vision. That is, I see God intellectually as being all those things, but emotionally and spiritually, I'm not trusting him with everything. I'm trying to make some things happen in my life. Hadn't recognized that until all of a sudden, whap, you got double vision. It's like, okay, I can acknowledge that. It isn't simply a matter of I got double vision. It sounds, oh, no big deal. But it's like, no, it's a sin. If I'm not trusting God, if I'm not doing everything I'm doing in God, but in myself instead, it's a sin. Now, we tend to sometimes minimize certain sins because, well, we don't think it's that big. It's not a big a deal to us. But just because it's not a big deal to us doesn't mean it's not a big deal to God. This is, apart from anything, an impediment to my walk with God. And he's saying, time to clear this up. You've got to make it a real part of you emotionally and spiritually, not just intellectually. So now I have to work this through. And there's a cost associated with it. The cost is, I'm going to have this as long as he wants me to have it, to pay the price. By which I mean, it's not the same, well, you have to pay a price. I'm not going to give you anything unless you pay a price. That is not the issue. The issue is about me changing myself. There's a cost associated with that. It's giving up my will to get a proper understanding and orientation toward what God wants me to do. And that, there's a cost associated with that. And if it was to pass, if it was to go away today or tomorrow, I have a tendency to go back to where I was. Why? It's human nature. You have to establish a habit before you can change your circumstances and lose it.
Amen.
So the cost for me establishing this new habit in Jesus Christ is my double vision. It's always a reminder to me, I'm not finished yet. And when it comes to the day, probably when I don't really notice it or it's minimized, then I'll probably have the right attitude and he'll take it away. But again, it's not about me being presumptuous about if and when he's going to do it. That is not the issue. The issue is Jesus Christ, beginning and end and everything in between. The issue is me getting with God's program. Absolutely, it's an irritation. Absolutely bothers me. But if it bothers me, how much does my disobedience bother God? He took the care and the time to give me double vision to help me to work on me. So I have to start with the right orientation. God, what do you want? Like Paul on the road to Damascus. He said, Lord, who are you? And then his next question is, and what do you want? It's like, let's get on with business here. And it's like, yes, I have to take the same approach. Okay, I know who you are, but what do you want? That's what's important. That's what's important for each and every one of us. That's what's important for us, for all the ladies here that are mothers. The issue is, what's important? Stay focused. You know, some mothers can get smothering. It's like, oh, they just are all over their kids and the kids don't have any room, and that's not proper mothering. And other kids, it's like, yeah, just go play in the traffic. You'll learn one way or the other, and that's not the proper approach. The proper balance is always, you care for your children, you instruct them, but mostly you pray for them. Every child, like every adult, has to make their mistakes and learn from them. You just pray God's covering and protection, and they don't hurt themselves too much in the process. That's life. That's motherhood. I respect mothers. Like I said, because the orientation is completely different than fatherhood. A father, yes, is a parent just like a mother is, but it's different in the sense of a father looks to provide for his family, to raise up his kids, and to send them out into the world to make their way. But a mother is always a mom. And I see that as much more difficult because men come to a place where they know and can usually, in a general context, let go of their kids, but for mothers it's much more difficult. You say, well, I don't know how they're going to make it on their own. It's motherhood. It's more difficult in the sense that you have to get into the presence of God to let go. A man knows one day he's going to be by himself with his wife. But a mother has problems really come to that place of letting go, to come to the empty nest, to let go of the empty nest. Men don't think of empty nest. Women do for the most part. And I'm talking about generalizations. It isn't always like that. You have to respect the mom. Because I think there's something completely different about motherhood. When you push that baby out of your own body and it's part of you, I think it's a much more intimate thing than a father. It's like, I was there for the birth of my kids. But it's still sort of secondhand. I was there to see the birth. But it wasn't like I was pushing them out of my own body. It's much more personal. And I think that has something to do with it. It has something to do with the way that mothers are made by God. It's like, yes, your mom for the rest of your life. It's a different experience. So we have a day to honor mothers. And it's a good thing. But we need to honor our mothers every day, not just on Mother's Day. Why? Because they gave birth to us. Didn't have to, but they did. They give birth to us, they deserve our respect. Sometimes we don't love them. Sometimes we don't like them. But they're always our mother, and they always deserve our respect. And that is my message for today. Double vision vote. One message.